Cedar Point has blown us away before. Steel Vengeance, Gatekeeper, Maverick, Top Thrill Dragster, Millennium Force, Magnum, Raptor, and so much more. Cedar Point is also no stranger to breaking records. Actually, they do it all the time. Steel Vengeance broke a ton of records, and so did Top Thrill Dragster. Magnum XL was the first coaster to cross the 200-foot mark, and Millennium Force was the first big up. This park even managed to break records on rides like Valraven and Raptor. Cedar Point is getting ready to build their next coaster, and if history is anything, it's gonna be one of the craziest machines we've ever seen. Get ready to get blown away. Corkscrew opened in May of 1976 as the first coaster to go upside down 3 times. Opening just weeks after Revolution at Six Flags Magic Mountain, Cedar Point snatched the inversion record from Six Flags. Just 2 years later, they were building another coaster, but it wasn't until 1989 that their next major project would open to the public. Magnum XL 200. Magnum opened on May 6th of 1989, being the first coaster to pass the 200-foot mark. It was a hypercoaster, but it was also the world's fastest and longest coaster. This was the beginning of the coaster wars. 1994 Vort Raptor, the tallest, longest, and fastest inverted coaster at the time. Built by B&M, this masterpiece is still one of the best coasters at the park. But Cedar Point wasn't finished with B&M just yet. Only 2 years later, in 1996, they opened Mantis, one of B&M's stand-up models, which was recently renamed Rogaro when it was converted to a sit-down coaster for the 2015 season. The park would only open one more coaster that century, Woodstock Express, a family Vekoma Jr. coaster, but the park wasn't slowing down. For Cedar Point, this was barely the beginning. Just 11 years after breaking the 200-foot barrier, Cedar Point contracted Intamin to build them a coaster that would blow everyone away. On May 13, 2000, Cedar Point would open its largest machine yet. Millennium Force wasn't actually the first coaster to go over 300 feet, but Cedar Point still said it was. Six Flags Magic Mountain had already opened Superman, but in Cedar Point's eyes, Superman was a drop tower. Millennium Force was one of the craziest coasters to ever open. People from across the globe came all the way to Cedar Point just to ride it. There's just something about it, an experience like no other coaster could offer. That 310-foot lift hill was the only lift hill of that size, and even today remains one of the few giga coasters in the world. But Cedar Point wasn't finished just yet. The park would open another coaster from Intamin in 2002. There was nothing crazy, but riding Wicked Twister is an experience of its own. There's just something about these Intamin impulse coasters that gets my adrenaline rushing every time. And though Wicked Coaster is now gone, its replacement will blow us away. But before we get to that, we need to talk about 2003. Yup, I'm talking about Top Thrill Dragster. It doesn't matter how big of a coaster lover you are. Going on the world's tallest coaster with lap bars for the first time will have you questioning your life's choices. This incredible machine launches you at 100 miles an hour up a 400-foot top hat before you drop down a 90-degree vertical drop heading straight to the brakes. It might be a short ride, but it'll instantly be one of your favorites. Top Thrill Dragster records may have been taken by King of the Con in 2005, but there's one thing that no other park can brag about. This is the only coaster that's this incredibly awesome and has lap bars. After one crazy coaster after the next, year after year, everyone was wondering what Cedar Point would do next. It had been 3 full years since Cedar Point's last coaster, and the world began to wonder if Cedar Point would ever be able to outdo themselves again. They went so big and so bold building Top Thrill Dragster, and that was just 3 years after Millennium Force opened. Cedar Point didn't know what to do either, so they picked up the phone. Intamin was already on the park's speed dial as they had contracted them to build 3 coasters from 2000 to 2003 at the park. September 7, 2006 was the day Cedar Point would announce their next coaster. It would be a launch coaster set to open for the 2007 season. Taking a look at the stats, the coaster felt like a letdown. It would be a launch coaster but would only reach speeds of 70 miles an hour. Its height, just 105 feet, and it would have 2 inversions. Comparing these stats to the previous coasters at Cedar Point, you may ask, what records will Maverick break? Or why is it only 105 feet? Cedar Point had to end the coaster wars. The records for the tallest and fastest coaster was becoming impossible to beat, but Cedar Point couldn't just give up. With the help of Intamin, Cedar Point would launch a new coaster war. A coaster war that would be the talk of the industry till today. A coaster war focused on quality. A coaster war where stats would still matter, but the ride experience would be the top priority. And that's how the Intamin Blitz coaster came to life. Intamin's Blitz coaster model may be their best model of all time. Cedar Point was at the front of it all, opening Maverick, one of the best coasters in the world. The Blitz model would go on to become more and more popular. First with Cheetah Hunt in 2011, then with Velocicoaster, and now Pantheon. Cedar Point was doing great, and then came 2008. Cedar Point's next coaster would come in 2013 along with a brand new entrance. Gatekeeper, their new B&M wing coaster, would fly over guests as they entered the park. The Valraven will open 3 years later, breaking a bunch of dive coaster records. With Cedar Point fading away, it was 10 years since their last mind-blowing coaster. But we all know what happened next. 2023 marks 5 full years since Steel Vengeance opened. But it looks like a new coaster won't be coming here until 2024. What could Cedar Point be adding? Maybe another B&M? They work well together. Hold on. They can't get an invert, floorless, wing, or dive, cause they already have those. The Hyper and Giga coaster models? Maybe, but Cedar Point already has a Hyper from Arrow and a Giga from Intamin. Maybe the Surf coaster is an option. Then there's RMC. Cedar Point just got an RMC, but maybe they wanna open a T-Rex. Okay, Mack Rides? They already have a multi-launch coaster from Intamin, but maybe they could get an Extreme Spinner. Honestly, every model I've mentioned so far doesn't sound right for Cedar Point. Cedar Point was planning to work with Gravity Group for Dorney Parks, so maybe they'll get a massive Gravity Group or GCI coaster. A Gerstlauer would be a great fit, and they just work with Gerstlauer for Knott's Berry Farm, so that could work. A 200-foot SNS Axis coaster would be awesome, and Cedar Fair is working with SNS right now. Then there's an idea I had. Maybe Cedar Point could open an Intamin or even a Mack Rides family multi-launch coaster. I was going back and forth between some of these options, but I couldn't come up with one option I was confident would become the park's next thrill machine. That's when I realized something. Cedar Point has blown us away so many times, and the only way they're gonna do that again is if we have no idea it's coming. So I'm not gonna predict the next coaster. I'm just waiting patiently for Cedar Point to make that announcement and blow us away once again.